The massive ship appeared above Earth on a Tuesday morning, blocking out the sun over half of North America. It was the size of a small moon, covered in spikes and weapons that glowed with threatening red light. Anyone looking up could see it was built for war. Inside the ship, Admiral Zextai stood on his command deck, all 7 feet of him covered in green scales and battle scars. His chest displayed dozens of medals from conquered worlds. Behind him, rows of alien soldiers stood at attention, waiting for orders to destroy another planet. Pathetic little world, Zextai growled, looking at Earth through his viewing screen. They don't even have proper space defenses. This will be over quickly. His communications officer, a spider-like creature with too many eyes, clicked nervously. Admiral, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. Good. They're probably begging for mercy already. Put it on the main screen. The screen flickered to life, showing a middle-aged human man sitting in what looked like a TV studio. He had messy brown hair and wore a wrinkled suit. Behind him, a banner read, Emergency Earth Response Team. Hello there, the human said cheerfully, waving at the camera. Welcome to Earth. I'm Dave Patterson, and I'll be your host today for this whole first contact thing. We're super excited to meet you. Admiral Zextai blinked all 3 of his eyes. This wasn't the terrified planetary leader he'd expected. Before we get started, Dave continued, we've got to ask, did you guys try turning your ship off and on again? Because that thing is really blocking our sun, and my neighbor's solar panels aren't getting any juice. The Admiral's jaw dropped open, showing rows of sharp teeth. In the background, other humans could be seen. One was a woman in a business suit frantically shuffling papers. Another appeared to be a teenager eating pizza. There was also someone in a lab coat who seemed to be trying to look through a telescope pointed at the alien ship. Silence, Admiral Zextai roared, his voice booming through the communication system. I am Admiral Zextai of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender your world immediately or face total destruction. Dave nodded thoughtfully. Right, the whole destruction thing. We get that a lot, actually. But here's the thing, and don't take this the wrong way. But your whole angry space tyrant routine is kind of... Well, it's been done, you know. Been done? The Admiral looked confused. Oh yeah, tons of times. We've got movies about it, books, TV shows. Heck, my nephew made a comic book about evil space lizards just last week. You guys really need some new material. Dr. Sarah Chen, the woman in the business suit, finally managed to push her way to the microphone. What my colleague means to say is that Earth welcomes peaceful contact with... Wait, Dave interrupted, pointing at the screen. Are those real battle scars or just makeup? Because if they're real, you've got some great stories there. We'd love to hear them. Admiral Zextai touched one of his scars reflexively. It was from a battle on Kepler 442b where he'd fought a warrior 3 times his size. These are marks of honor from... That's amazing, Dave exclaimed. You know what? Instead of the whole invasion thing, why don't you come down for coffee? We'll swap war stories. I bet you've got better ones than my Uncle Bob, and he was in 3 different wars. The teenage human popped up behind Dave, still holding pizza. Are you guys vegetarians? Because we've got like 15 different types of pizza here, and I'm pretty sure at least 3 of them don't have meat. This is not how first contact is supposed to go, muttered the spider-like communications officer, Admiral. Zextai was starting to feel a headache coming on. You dare mock the might of the Galactic Empire? Mock? Dave looked genuinely surprised. No, we're not mocking anything. We just think you guys look tense. When's the last time you laughed? Laughed? Laughed, chuckled, found something funny. Dave turned to someone off camera. Sarah, show them that video of the cat trying to fit in the tiny box. Dave, this is a diplomatic crisis. Dr. Chen hissed. Come on, everyone loves cat videos. The screen suddenly split, showing a small video of an orange cat attempting to squeeze itself into a shoebox far too small for it. The cat kept trying different angles, getting more frustrated each time, until it finally gave up and knocked the box off the table in annoyance. Despite himself, Admiral Zextai felt his mouth twitch. It reminded him of his youngest nephew trying to fit into his father's armor. See? Dave grinned. Universal humor. I bet even scary space admirals think cats are funny. I do not think cats are... The Admiral caught himself. This is ridiculous. I have a schedule to keep. Other worlds to conquer. Other worlds? The teenager perked up. Cool, what are they like? Do they have good food? We're always looking for new recipes. The human in the lab coat suddenly spoke up. From a scientific perspective, we'd love to know about your faster-than-light travel. Our physicists have been working on that problem for decades. And the engineering on your ship is incredible, added another voice from off-camera. The power requirements alone must be fascinating. Admiral Zexthai found himself surrounded by genuinely curious faces, all asking questions about his technology, his empire, his experiences. Nobody seemed afraid. If anything, they seemed excited. You're not supposed to be interested, he said weakly. You're supposed to be terrified. Why would we be terrified? Dave asked. This is the coolest thing that's ever happened. First contact with aliens. Do you know how long we've been waiting for this? But I'm here to conquer your world. Right, but that's just your job, isn't it? What do you do for fun? The question caught the Admiral completely off guard. Fun? You know, hobbies. What do you do when you're not conquering planets? Admiral Zexthai thought about it. When he wasn't on duty, he enjoyed reading ancient battle poetry and tending to his collection of rare crystals. Sometimes he played strategy games with his officers. But he'd never thought of these as fun before. I collect crystals, he admitted. That's awesome. Dave's face lit up. We've got some amazing geological museums here. You should totally check them out. And our gift shops have some really unique stones. Dr. Chen finally managed to get back to the microphone. Admiral, Earth would like to propose a cultural exchange. We share our knowledge and customs, you share yours. Everyone benefits. Yeah, the teenager added. And we can show you our memes. They're like jokes but in picture form. We've got thousands of them. What? Admiral Zexthai asked slowly. Is a meme? Dave and the teenager exchanged glances. Oh boy, Dave said, grinning. Sarah, cancel all my appointments. This is going to take a while. Over the next hour, Admiral Zexthai found himself watching something called Funny, animal compilation videos while humans explained concepts like viral content and internet culture. He discovered that humans had created an entire digital civilization dedicated to sharing jokes, cat pictures, and videos of people falling down. When his communications officer reminded him about the invasion schedule, Admiral Zexthai found himself saying, "Push it back a few hours. I need to understand these memes better." It was, he would later realize, the moment the Galactic Empire's perfect conquest record began to crack. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dave Patterson turned to Dr. Chen and whispered, "I think this is going pretty well, don't you?" Dr. Chen just sighed and reached for more coffee. It was going to be a very long day. 3 days later, Admiral Zexthai was still in Earth's orbit and the Galactic Empire was getting impatient. The Admiral's personal communicator had been buzzing non-stop with messages from High Command, demanding to know why Earth wasn't a smoking crater yet. The truth was embarrassing. Admiral Zexthai had spent the last 72 hours watching something called YouTube and learning about human culture. He'd discovered that humans had wars, but they also had cooking shows. They had weapons, but they also had videos of babies laughing. It was all very confusing. When the second Imperial ship arrived, it was twice the size of the first and painted black with gold trim. This was the legal department. Magistrate Clixion materialized on the command deck of the Eternal Dominion in a flash of blue light. He was tall and thin, like a praying mantis wearing expensive robes. His species had evolved from creatures that ate their enemies slowly, and he considered legal warfare the highest art form. "Admiral," Clixion said, his voice dripping with disdain, "your failure to conquer this primitive world is an embarrassment to the Empire. I am here to correct your mistakes." Admiral Zexthai looked up from his tablet, where he'd been watching a video of humans racing office chairs down a hill. "Magistrate, I don't think these humans are as primitive as we thought." "Nonsense. I've brought the full weight of Imperial law. The Codex Imperialis has never failed to justify a conquest. 47,000 pages of legal precedent from across the galaxy." Magistrate Clixion activated his holographic legal display, filling the air with floating documents written in dozens of alien languages. "Once I present them with the legal reality of their situation, they'll have no choice but to surrender." "Actually," Admiral Zexthai said carefully, "they sent us some documents too." "What kind of documents?" "Legal ones. They said something about lawyering up." Magistrate Clixion laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Primitive planetary law cannot stand against Imperial jurisprudence. I'll contact their leaders immediately." The communication screen activated, showing the same TV studio setup as before. But this time, instead of Dave Patterson, there was a woman in a sharp business suit sitting behind a desk covered with thick books and papers. "Good morning," she said pleasantly. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, representing Earth in this matter. I understand you gentlemen have some legal concerns?" Magistrate Clixion puffed up with pride. "I am Magistrate Clixion of the Imperial Legal Corps. Your world is required to surrender under Section 47B of the Galactic Conquest Code. Subsection 12, paragraph... Actually, Jennifer interrupted politely, I'm going to stop you right there. We've reviewed your legal documents, and I'm afraid there are some problems. Problems? Clixion's voice cracked slightly. Jennifer picked up a thick folder. First, Earth was never notified of the formation of your galactic empire, so we're not bound by any laws we didn't agree to. That's basic contract law, but the empire includes all inhabited worlds. Says who? Did anyone ask us? Did we sign anything? Is there any documentation showing Earth's consent to be governed by your laws? Magistrate Clixion's mouth opened and closed like a fish. In 40,000 years of imperial expansion, this question had never come up. Furthermore, Jennifer continued, flipping through her notes, we found 17 grammatical errors in Section 23 of your codex that completely changed the meaning of your conquest laws. Also, you're citing the Treaty of Vega Prime, but according to our research, Vega Prime was destroyed by a supernova 3,000 years before that treaty was supposedly signed. That's impossible. Our legal scholars... Also, another voice called from off-camera, you guys misspelled galaxy in your official title documents. It's Galaxy, not Galacxy. A young man stepped into view holding a red pen. I'm Brad, I'm in my second year of law school. We've been fact-checking your legal documents all night. Want to see what else we found? Brad held up a paper covered in red marks. This section about rightful conquest of inferior species contradicts this other section about equal treatment under imperial law. Also, your definition of inhabited world technically excludes any planet with oceans, which is weird because you've conquered like 50 ocean worlds. Magistrate Clixion felt something he'd never experienced before. Legal panic. Jennifer smiled kindly. Now, we're not trying to be difficult. We're actually quite interested in joining the galactic community. But first, we need to clear up these legal issues. What do you propose? Clixion asked weakly. Well, first, Earth is filing a complaint with whatever galactic court system you have. We're claiming sovereign immunity based on the fact that we were never legally incorporated into your empire. Second, Brad added, we're countersuing for trespassing, environmental damage from your ship's exhaust, and emotional distress caused by threatening to blow up our planet. Third, Jennifer continued, we're challenging the legal basis of your entire empire. If you can't legally justify conquering Earth, how can you justify conquering anyone else? Another human appeared on screen, an older man with gray hair. I'm Professor Martinez from Harvard Law. I've been studying your legal codes, and I believe most of your conquests violate the basic principles of consent and due process. Due process? Clixion whispered. You know, fair trials, legal representation, the right to appeal. Did any of the worlds you conquered get lawyers? Admiral Zexthai, who had been watching this exchange in growing amazement, leaned toward his legal expert. Did they get lawyers? We don't usually... Clixion's voice trailed off. Because, Professor Martinez continued, if they didn't, then every single conquest in your empire's history could be legally invalid. The command deck fell silent except for the humming of the ship's engines. Clixion was staring at the screen like he'd seen a ghost. There's more, Jennifer said cheerfully. We've been in contact with some of your other conquered worlds. Turns out a lot of them are interested in better legal representation. The screen split, showing dozens of different alien faces. A blue-skinned humanoid waved tentatively. Hello, Earth lawyers. The Empire told us we had to surrender, but nobody mentioned we could say no. A rock-like creature spoke up. We've been paying imperial taxes for 2,000 years. Can we get receipts for those? This is impossible, Clixion muttered. The Empire's legal system is perfect. It's been tested across the galaxy for millennia. Well, Brad said, holding up another paper, it's never been tested against Earth lawyers. We've got like 2 million lawyers here, and most of them are really bored. Jennifer nodded. We've got specialists in interplanetary law, space property rights, alien civil rights, and something called cosmic constitutional law that Professor Martinez invented last Tuesday. The good news, Professor Martinez added, is that we think we can help fix your legal system. It just needs some updates. You know, little things like getting permission before conquering people and not threatening to blow up planets during legal negotiations. Admiral Zexthai found himself laughing despite the situation. Magistrate, I think we might be outmatched. Clixion was reading through a document one of the humans had sent him. His face was getting paler by the minute. Admiral, this human legal brief is only 30 pages long, but it systematically dismantles 5,000 years of imperial conquest law. And we wrote it in one night, Brad said proudly. Wait until you see what we can do with a full week. Jennifer stood up, straightening her jacket. Gentlemen, Earth would like to propose a settlement. We'll help you update your legal system to make it actually fair, and in exchange you don't blow up our planet. We think everyone wins. Clixion looked at Admiral Zexthai, then back at the screen full of smiling humans and expectant aliens. For the first time in his long career, he felt completely out of his depth. He said slowly, need to call my supervisor. As the communication ended, Admiral Zexthai patted Clixion on the shoulder. Don't feel bad. They got me with cat videos. Cat videos? Long story. Want some coffee? The humans taught me how to make it. 2 weeks after the legal disaster, the Galactic Empire decided to try a different approach. If they couldn't conquer Earth through force or law, maybe they could understand humans well enough to find a weakness. The Empire's greatest minds gathered on the capital world of Zixnara to plan a cultural exchange. They would send their finest scholars, warriors, and artists to Earth to study human behavior. In return, they demanded that Earth send representatives to learn about imperial culture. We'll figure out what makes them tick, declared General Throckmar, the Empire's chief military strategist. Every species has a weakness. We just need to find theirs. What arrived on Earth was impressive. 50 of the Empire's best and brightest, including philosophers who had spent centuries studying the nature of conquest, warriors who had never lost a battle, and artists whose work had inspired fear across the galaxy. What Earth sent in, return made the Imperial Welcoming Committee very confused. Human delegations stepped off their small shuttle onto the gleaming floors of the Imperial capital's main spaceport. There was Marcus, a stand-up comedian from Chicago who kept looking around and taking notes. Lisa, a kindergarten teacher from Oregon who immediately started organizing the confused Imperial guards into a proper line. Tony, a pizza delivery driver from New York who seemed to know shortcuts through the massive spaceport that even the locals didn't know about. Margaret, a retired grandmother from Iowa who had brought 3 suitcases full of homemade cookies. And Alex, a college student who kept pointing at things and saying that would make a great meme. These are Earth's finest representatives? Asked Commander Vexel, who had been assigned to escort the humans. Marcus grinned. Oh no, we're just the ones who volunteered. Earth's finest representatives are way too busy to come here. They're running countries and curing diseases and stuff. Commander Vexel, a 7-foot-tall warrior covered in ceremonial armor, felt his confidence shake a little. The problem started immediately. Lisa, the kindergarten teacher, took one look at the Imperial Honor Guard and shook her head. Gentlemen, what kind of line is this? You tall blue one, you're slouching. And you, the one with the tentacles, stop pushing your neighbor. Within minutes, she had the most feared military unit in the galaxy standing in a perfect line, sharing space nicely, and taking turns speaking instead of all growling at once. Now, Lisa said, clapping her hands together, who can tell me the magic words we use when we want something? Surrender or die, roared the guard captain. That's not quite right. The magic word is please. Can everyone say please? Please? Repeated 50 confused alien warriors. Very good. Now who wants to learn about sharing? Meanwhile, Marcus had discovered the Imperial torture chamber and was horrified. Not because of the torture devices, but because of the complete lack of comedic timing. Look, I get what you're going for here, he told the torture master, a spider-like creature with too many arms. Fear, intimidation, suffering. Classic stuff. But your presentation is all wrong. Wrong? The torture master had been perfecting his craft for centuries. Yeah, where's the drama? The build-up? You're just jumping straight to the painful stuff. That's not scary, that's just unpleasant. Marcus gestured around the room. You need atmosphere. Mood lighting. Maybe some spooky music. Before anyone could stop him, Marcus had turned the torture chamber into an interactive horror experience, complete with jump scares, dramatic reveals, and audience participation. Visiting Imperial officials found themselves screaming not from pain but from suspense, and then laughing at their own reactions. The torture master discovered he was much better at timing comedy than timing pain. Tony, the pizza driver, was causing his own kind of chaos in the Imperial Transportation Department. The Empire's logistics network, which had been the same for thousands of years, suddenly had a human suggesting improvements. Why do your supply ships go through the Crab Nebula? Tony asked, looking at a massive star chart. That adds like 3 days to the trip. Just go around it. Around it. The transportation chief, a floating brain in a jar, had never considered this. But we've always gone through it. Yeah, but it's slower and probably more dangerous. Look, you've got this clear path right here that cuts the travel time in half. Tony traced a route with his finger that somehow avoided all the space hazards the Empire had been dealing with for millennia. How did you know about that route? Asked the chief. Same way I know all the shortcuts in Brooklyn. You just look for the path that makes sense. Within a week, Tony had revolutionized Imperial shipping. Cargo that used to take months to deliver was arriving in weeks. The Empire's economy began running more efficiently than it had in centuries. Margaret, meanwhile, had adopted half the Imperial Senate as her dear boys and was treating them like grandchildren who didn't eat enough vegetables. Senator Clixion, you look thin. Have you been eating? She asked the magistrate who was still recovering from his legal defeat. I consume nutrition paste like all Imperial citizens, he replied, confused. Nutrition paste? That's not food, that's barely a snack. Here, try one of these cookies. The cookie was warm, sweet, and unlike anything Clixion had ever tasted. It reminded him of something from his childhood, before he'd joined the legal corps and forgotten about simple pleasures. This is wonderful, he admitted. Of course it is, dear. Now I've been talking to your colleagues, and it sounds like you all work too hard. When's the last time you took a vacation? Vacation? The concept was foreign to him. Time off, rest, fun. You know, life outside of work. Margaret patted his arm like she was talking to her own grandson. All work and no play makes for very unhappy people. By the end of the first week, Margaret had introduced the concept of lunch breaks to the Imperial government. Productivity actually increased when people weren't working 18-hour days. Alex, the college student, was having the most fun of all. He'd discovered that Imperial propaganda was essentially ancient memes, and he was teaching Imperial artists about modern meme theory. See? Your basic Obey the Empire poster is just a variation on the classic motivational poster format, he explained to a group of confused Imperial artists. But you're missing the irony layer. And where's the cat content? Everyone loves cat content within days. Imperial propaganda had evolved from threatening posters to clever, shareable content that actually made people want to join the Empire instead of being forced to. On Earth, things were going equally strangely for the Imperial delegation. Imperial scholars tried to understand human warfare by studying chess, only to discover there were hundreds of variants. Chess boxing left them completely baffled. How could a species combine intellectual strategy with physical combat and somehow make it entertaining? Their report back to the Empire classified humans as tactically unpredictable to the point of cosmic horror. Imperial warriors challenged humans to combat trials, expecting glorious battle. Instead, they found themselves playing tag, laser tag, and something called capture the flag. When they demanded more serious combat, humans introduced them to competitive eating contests. General Mordock, the Empire's greatest champion, was defeated by a suburban father named Jim in a hot dog eating contest. The defeat was so complete and so ridiculous that Mordock spent 3 days questioning everything he thought. He knew about strength and victory. Imperial artists attempted to create anti-human propaganda but kept getting distracted by Earth's internet. They discovered memes, viral videos, and something called fan art. Their anti-human propaganda gradually transformed into collaborative art projects featuring humans and aliens working together. The breaking point came when the Imperial scholars submitted their final report on human military capabilities. The report was 17 pages long and concluded with, "We don't know what they're doing, but it's working. And we're scared to find out why. General Throckmar read the report 3 times before calling an emergency meeting. Let me understand this, he said to his assembled staff. Our torture expert has become a comedian. Our transportation chief has improved our shipping efficiency by following the advice of someone who delivers pizza. Our legal system is being rewritten by their students, and our propaganda department is now producing content that makes people actually like the Empire. Yes, sir, replied his aide nervously. And on their world, our greatest warriors have been defeated by competitive eating. Our scholars are confused by board games, and our artists are making friendship bracelets, and also, yes, sir, General Throckmar was quiet for a long moment. I think, he said finally, we might have made a mistake. By the 3rd week of the cultural exchange, the Galactic Empire was falling apart. Not from rebellion or war, but from something much worse: efficiency and happiness. Imperial productivity was up 30% because workers were taking lunch breaks and getting enough sleep. The transportation system was running so smoothly that cargo ships were arriving early for the first time in galactic history. The legal department had actually started helping people instead of finding reasons to arrest them. Worst of all, Imperial citizens were beginning to ask questions like, why do we need to conquer people? And wouldn't it be nicer if we just asked planets to join us? Emperor Vexnakoth had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. He was older than most stars, more powerful than supernovas, and had never been confused by anything. Until now, the Emperor existed as pure energy most of the time, floating above physical concerns in his crystal palace. But the reports coming from Earth were so disturbing that he decided to take physical form for the first time in centuries. He materialized as a towering figure of crackling purple energy, wearing robes that seemed to be made of starlight. When he spoke, his voice could be heard across solar systems. He was, by any measure, one of the most powerful beings in the universe, and he was completely baffled by humans. Bring me Admiral Zexthai, the Emperor commanded. I will hear his explanation for this disaster. Admiral Zexthai arrived at the Imperial Palace expecting to be executed for his failures. Instead, he found the Emperor sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable chair, reading something on a small Earth device called a tablet. Admiral, the Emperor said without looking up, explain to me what a cat video is and why I have watched 47 of them in the past hour. My lord, the humans introduced me to their internet. It contains all of their knowledge and culture, but it also contains entertainment, I see. And this entertainment is why half my empire is now watching something called funny animal compilations, instead of conducting imperial business. Yes, my lord. The humans share these videos to make each other happy. They say laughter is important for mental health. Emperor Vexnakoth finally looked up from the tablet. Admiral, in your professional opinion, is this some kind of weapon? I don't think so, my lord. I think they're just nice. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Nice, he repeated as if testing an alien concept. My lord, if I may suggest, perhaps you should visit Earth yourself. To understand the situation better, the Emperor had conquered 1,000 worlds without ever setting foot on them. The idea of personally visiting a planet was almost unthinkable. But these humans had done something no enemy had ever accomplished. They had confused him. Very well, he said finally. Prepare my ship. We go to Earth. The Emperor's arrival at Earth was meant to be a show of ultimate imperial power. His personal vessel was the size of a city, black as space itself and surrounded by an honor guard of 100 warships. When it appeared above Earth, it blotted out the sky. But instead of the terror he expected, the Emperor was greeted by something much stranger, a welcome party. The communication screen in his throne room activated, showing the now familiar sight of humans in their makeshift TV studio. But this time they had decorations, balloons, banners, and what appeared to be a cake. Your Imperial Majesty, Dave Patterson said cheerfully. Welcome to Earth. We're so honored to meet you. We've prepared a little celebration for your visit. The Emperor, who had expected cowering and pleas for mercy, found himself looking at a chocolate cake with Welcome Emperor Vexnakoth written in colorful frosting. We know you're probably busy, Dr. Sarah Chen added, but we'd love to invite you down for dinner. Nothing fancy, just a chance to talk and get to know each other. Dinner? The Emperor had not eaten physical food in over a millennium. Oh, and we should mention, Dave continued, We've been in touch with some of your people. They're great. Admiral Zexthai taught us about crystalline structures, and Magistrate Clixion has been helping us understand galactic history. Very educational. The Emperor looked around his throne room expecting to see his usual court of terrified advisors. Instead, he found them watching the human broadcast with what looked like genuine interest. "My lord," whispered his chief advisor, "the humans have sent gifts. Cultural exchanges. There's a collection of what they call books and some samples of something called chocolate." "Chocolate? It's quite good, my lord." 2 hours later, Emperor Vexnikoth found himself in the most surreal situation of his 3,000-year life. He was sitting at a folding table in a United Nations meeting room, surrounded by humans who seemed genuinely happy to meet him. There was pizza, soda, and a selection of desserts that defied his understanding. "So," said the human leader, Secretary General Maria Santos, "we understand you run quite a large organization. That must be challenging." The Emperor, who had been prepared for battle or negotiation, found himself in what appeared to be casual conversation. "It is complex. 3 million worlds, countless species, thousands of years of tradition." 3 million worlds, exclaimed Dr. Chen. "The logistics alone must be incredible. How do you manage communication across those distances?" "We have a network of quantum relays that—" The Emperor stopped himself. Why was he explaining Imperial technology to primitives? But their genuine curiosity was oddly disarming. An elderly human named Harold, who had introduced himself as a retired postal worker, nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like our mail system, but bigger. We always found that the key to good communication is making sure people actually want to receive your messages." "What do you mean?" "Well, if you're always sending threats and demands, people stop paying attention. But if you send useful information or just check in to see how they're doing, they're more likely to respond positively." The Emperor considered this. Imperial communications were indeed mostly demands and threats. He had never thought about whether the recipients wanted to receive them. "Your Majesty," said a young human named Emma, "can I ask why you want to conquer so many worlds? It sounds like a lot of work." The question was so simple, so direct that it caught the Emperor completely off guard. Because that is what emperors do. We expand, we conquer, we rule. But why?" Emma persisted. "What do you get out of it?" The Emperor opened his mouth to give the traditional answer about glory and power, but the words wouldn't come. What did he get out of it? 3,000 years of managing complaints, rebellions, and administrative problems. When was the last time he had actually enjoyed being emperor? "You know," said Harold, "in my experience, people work better when they want to be part of something, not when they're forced to be part of it." "But how do you maintain order without conquest?" the Emperor asked. "Well," Maria said, "we have this thing called the United Nations. Countries choose to join and we work together on common problems. It's not perfect, but it's better than everyone fighting all the time." "You mean voluntary cooperation?" "Sure. Most of our biggest achievements came from countries working together by choice. Space exploration, disease eradication, scientific research. Turns out people are pretty amazing when they're not being threatened." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, absently eating a piece of chocolate cake. It was, he had to admit, delicious. "Your Majesty," Dave said gently, "can I ask when you last took a vacation?" "A what?" "Time off, rest, fun. You know, a break from work." The Emperor tried to remember the last time he had done something just because he enjoyed it. The answer was disturbing. He couldn't remember. "I don't think I've ever taken a vacation," he admitted. "That's terrible." Emma exclaimed. "Everyone needs downtime. What do you do for fun?" "I rule the galaxy. That's work, not fun." "What do you do when you're not working?" The Emperor realized with growing horror that he was always working. For 3,000 years he had done nothing but rule, conquer, and manage an empire that seemed to create more problems than it solved. "I think," he said slowly, "I may have made some mistakes, Margaret." The grandmother from Iowa patted his energy form hand kindly. "Don't worry, dear. Everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." The Emperor looked around the room at these strange, kind humans who had somehow made him question everything he thought he knew about power and rulership. "Perhaps," he said finally, "we should discuss some changes to how the Empire operates." 6 months later, the galaxy looked very different. The signing ceremony for the Treaty of Mutual Confusion and Cooperation was being held on a space station halfway between Earth and the former imperial capital. The station had been hastily converted from a military outpost into what humans called a conference center, complete with comfortable chairs, good lighting, and a cafeteria that served food from 100 different worlds. Emperor Vexnakoth stood before the assembled delegates, but he looked nothing like the terrifying cosmic tyrant he had been. He was still made of crackling purple energy, but he wore a baseball cap that said, "My one boss," a gift from the humans. In his energy hand, he held a coffee mug that read, "World's okayest emperor. Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his voice no longer booming with threat but carrying a tone of genuine warmth. "Today we officially dissolve the Galactic Empire and establish the Galactic Community Association." The cheers that erupted were unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. For the first time in millennia, alien species were cheering for their government instead of being afraid of it. Admiral Zexthai, now wearing a assistant regional manager badge that he was inexplicably proud of, stepped forward to read the new charter. The GCA will operate on the revolutionary principles of asking nicely before doing things and actually listening when people say no. More cheers. In the audience, representatives from 3 million worlds applauded the idea of having their opinions matter. Furthermore, Admiral Zexthai continued, "All former imperial policies of conquer first, ask questions later are hereby replaced with invitation-based membership and really good welcome parties." Magistrate Clixion, who now went by Director of Making Sure Things Are Fair, presented the new legal framework. It was exactly 127 pages long and included helpful illustrations. "The new Galactic Legal Code," he announced, "is based on the radical concept that laws should make sense and that people should understand them before being expected to follow them." In the back of the room, Earth's legal team gave him a thumbs up. They had worked together to create a legal system that was both comprehensive and readable. It was perhaps the greatest diplomatic achievement in galactic history. The human delegation was there in full force. Dave Patterson had been appointed Secretary of Interspecies Humor, a position that apparently involved making sure all galactic communications included at least one joke to keep them friendly. Dr. Sarah Chen was now Director of Diplomatic Common Sense, helping species work out their differences through something revolutionary called talking about it. Marcus, the comedian, had founded the first intergalactic comedy club. His opening night performance had been attended by Emperor Vexnakoth himself, who discovered that he actually had a pretty good sense of humor once he stopped trying to be terrifying all the time. Lisa, the kindergarten teacher, had been appointed Minister of Conflict Resolution. Her methods of treating galactic disputes like playground arguments had proven surprisingly effective. More than one territorial war had been resolved with the simple question, "Now, did you ask nicely before taking that star system?" Tony, the pizza delivery driver, was now Director of Logistics and getting things places on time. Imperial shipping had become so efficient under his guidance that some cargo was arriving before it was even sent, which was causing interesting temporal physics discussions. Margaret, the grandmother, had somehow become the unofficial therapist for half the galaxy's leadership. Her homemade cookies had done more for interspecies relations than centuries of formal diplomacy. She was currently helping a warrior species learn about feelings and using your words instead of your weapons. Alex, the college student, had revolutionized galactic communication by introducing the concept of constructive memes. Imperial propaganda had been replaced by genuinely helpful and entertaining content that people actually wanted to share, but the biggest change was visible in the ceremony itself. Where once there had been formal ranks and rigid hierarchy, there was now something that looked remarkably like a potluck dinner. Former Imperial dreadnoughts had been converted into food trucks, serving everything from Earth pizza to Andromedan crystalline soup. Ex-Imperial shock troops were teaching alien children games like Red Light, Green Light, and Duck, Duck, Goose. The most feared military fleet in galactic history was now running three-legged races and organizing talent shows. Emperor Vexnakoth, now calling himself President Vex, approached the human delegation during a break in the ceremony. "I wanted to thank you," he said, his energy form somehow managing to look embarrassed. "For the first time in 3,000 years, I actually enjoy my job." "What changed?" Dave asked, genuinely curious. "Everything. Instead of spending my time crushing rebellions and managing conquered worlds that hate me, I get to help solve problems and make life better for people who actually want me around. Yesterday, I helped mediate a trade dispute between the Rigel colonies, and everyone was grateful instead of terrified. It was nicey, Dr. Chen smiled. Turns out being liked is more fun than being feared, right? Much more fun. Although I have to ask, how did you know this would work? When Admiral Zexthai first arrived, did you have some kind of plan to reform our entire empire? Dave and Dr. Chen exchanged glances. Honestly, Dave said, we were just trying not to get blown up. You were improvising? Pretty much. We figured if we were going to be conquered, we might as well try to make friends with our conquerors. Worst case scenario, we'd get destroyed by people who at least thought we were funny. President Vex shook his energy head in amazement. You accidentally revolutionized galactic civilization by being friendly. Is that weird? Asked Emma, the young human who had first asked why the Emperor wanted to conquer everything. Extremely weird, President Vex admitted. But it's the best kind of weird. The ceremony continued, with the lighting of the eternal flame of getting. A tradition that humans had invented on the spot, but that everyone agreed was very meaningful. Representatives from every member world took turns adding something to the flame. Some brought wood, others brought crystals, and a few gaseous species contributed small clouds that burned in pretty colors. As the ceremony concluded, construction crews could be seen in the distance working on the galaxy's first intergalactic community center. The plans included a library, a gymnasium, meeting rooms for democratic discussions, and a massive kitchen for potluck dinners. The old Imperial anthem, "Crush all who oppose us," had been replaced with "We're all in this together," which was much more upbeat and easier to sing along with. As delegates began to mingle and sample foods from across the galaxy, Admiral Zexthai found himself standing next to General Throckmar, who was wearing an apron and helping serve refreshments. "Do you ever miss the old days?" the Admiral asked. "You mean the constant war, the rebellions, the fear, and the paperwork?" General Throckmar considered this. "Not really. Yesterday I helped establish a trade route that's going to improve life for 12 different species, and nobody got conquered. It was the best day I've had in centuries." Same. I spent the morning teaching a group of young aliens about crystalline structures, and they were actually interested instead of just pretending to pay attention because they were afraid I'd execute them. They watched as humans and aliens laughed together over shared meals and terrible puns translated into 10,000 languages. In one corner, former Imperial artists were collaborating with local musicians to create the galaxy's first interspecies boy band. In another, a group of scientists from different worlds were excitedly discussing a joint research project. "You know what the strangest part is?" Admiral Zexthai said. "What?" "We're actually better at ruling the galaxy now that we're not trying to rule it." General Throckmar nodded. "Turns out people are a lot more cooperative when they're happy." In the distance, construction had begun on a sign for the new community center. It read, "Galactic Community Association, all species welcome, no conquering required, cookies available every Tuesday. Emperor Vexnakoth." Now President Vex looked out at the celebration and smiled. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy was at peace not because everyone was afraid, but because everyone was friends. And it had all started because humans couldn't stop laughing. The galaxy, as it turned out, was much more fun when everyone was invited to join the joke.